We got it going. With the spin of the wheel, we'll uncover our fate and stream it to you on one take. We tend to be loud and we fight quite a bit, but it's an unscripted show, so you get what you get. If we stopped to right now and we just walked away, we'd be back here next week, cause we just can't wait to play.
Hello, comrades, and welcome to another edition of ARG Presents. I'm your good buddy, your good pal, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man making his long-anticipated return to the show. Please welcome back warmly the Brent.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
It's good to have you back in the
good to be
saddle, the
back.
Brent.
It's good to be back.
It's been a scary couple weeks as I tried to negotiate the season of podcasting without you. So I'm glad to have you back in a big chair. And you were sorely missed by a lot of the listeners and viewers over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to all the well wishes that I got during my absence. I was in tune with the community as much as I could be, and I saw that, and it really did warm my heart. And
who knew you had one? That's
yeah.
what stunned me.
Yeah,
I'm baffled by that.
And to the individual that donated a fairly large sum of money to me. You know who you are. I don't want to call you out because I don't know if you want to be called out. Thank you very much. That actually went to getting some well-deserved warm meals of pizza throughout the weeks. So it was very nice.
Very good. We appreciate everybody out there. So you arrived back on a very auspicious eve, the Brent, because boy, it's, a month or so ago, we spun the wheel. We made the deal. And this week, the Brent, we're going to be playing games that were available in Soviet Russia arcades.
Yes.
These are arcade games from behind the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union of that era in the 80s, in this particular case. And so, you know, we've probably all seen floating around. I've seen this web page that comes up every so often, or a link to a video of someone touring these little arcades. And I thought to myself, that's pretty much was the extent of my knowledge. So I did, of course, I looked around to do a little research on this to see what's the scoop on this. So the best I could come up with, and it all goes back to 1969. There was an outfit called the Soyuz Attraction Association. And they were created by the Soviet government to study in the entertainment industries from other lands and see how they could integrate them into the USSR.
Yes.
So these guys would go around and they literally toured the world looking at various amusements to see how they could be integrated into a Soviet lifestyle.
And by that, we mean literally anything, be it rides, be it contraptions, different type of motion picture devices, everything, toys, playground equipment. It was literally everything was on the table.
So in 70, a Soviet delegation visited all sorts of facilities in Japan, Germany, and the USA for just this purpose. Now, flash forward to 71, there was an exhibition held in Moscow called Attraction 71. And it presented a lot of the things that had been found as these guys toured around. There were a ton of roller coasters and arcade machines from various countries. And it was all there to sort of to see what people liked, what they enjoyed, what got over with the Soviets. And so they decided that amongst the things they were going to integrate into Soviet society for entertainment purposes would be games,
arcade machines,
not necessarily video games, but games, including gambling games.
Yes.
Now, so you're thinking to yourself, that seems like an odd fit for Soviet Russia, and it was. So they decided that the way they were going to do gaming in Russia, it wasn't just going to be like you put in money and win quarters in a slot machine or whatever. You weren't rewarded with that, but you would often you would get like a badge, or a gift, something like that.
Physical achievement award,
which I thought was, so your gambling machines gave you some sort of physical goodie, which I thought was interesting. One of the things I thought was interesting as well as I was reading on this, they talked about how these guys created these games. So, like, they would look at like a slot machine,
Well,
for
wait a
example.
minute.
Go ahead.
You got to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
How these created these games was as Russia as Soviet Union as
Well,
it gets.
that's
Were you getting there?
that's sort of where I was going. So they would have a look at, and the example I saw mentioned on the wiki was they take a look at a slot machine, and so okay, we've got a slot machine, and they would go back to make a Russian slot machine, but a slot machine would have like microprocessor in it, right? That did a majority of the work. They didn't have that in Soviet Russia, and so they would basically make the mechanical equivalent of this, and so their stuff was incredibly intricate and incredibly prone to break because it was had so many non-custom like parts that they called together to make this stuff work.
And really, it goes. It's far more amazing than that. The story I heard was so at 71 they had this big shindig, right?
Attraction 71 at
Yeah.
Gorky Park, right?
And all around the world, people brought in pinball machines was a big one, and all these mechanical machines
And roller coasters.
and little roller coaster stuff. And at the end, the Soviet Union was like, "Listen, you don't need to take all this stuff back home. Let us just give you the money for it." And what we'll do is we'll kind of put these on some test locations, see what works with our population, and then we'll just buy whatever our people like the most. And the manufacturers were like, okay, that saves us from shipping all this crap back. Well, they went and they gathered up all that stuff and then just took it all apart. They never had any intention on buying it. They took it apart to see what made it tick
Yeah.
so they could just start manufacturing their own stuff. So that is how, because at this time, Soviet Union had so many trade embargoes and crap like that, that they couldn't feasibly get the parts that they needed. So they had to figure out how something worked and then make it work with the parts they could get.
Yeah.
Very, very underhanded and dastardly.
Well, I mean, you got to play the hand you're dealt, and when you're not going to deal with other countries straight up, God, think about it. I read that they had 50 roller coasters on display at that thing. Let's hope they didn't do that with roller coasters, because that would make me not want their. It's one thing when you botch the job with a slot machine. If you botch the job with a roller coaster, you got a problem. So, so the Ministry of Culture commissioned the creation and decided that they would distribute the various work orders for these machines through 22 classified defense factories. These are the places that made these. So places that were making missiles and bombs and radar systems were also making various games, which is are parts of the games.
I heard a story of a guy that worked at these places, or he didn't work at them. He was an inspector to make sure everything was running up to Soviet standards.
Yeah.
But he didn't have military clearance. He was a commercial guy. So when they took him into these facilities, they blindfolded him to walk him past all of the military stuff
Yeah.
in the back corners where they did all the arcade building and the mechanical game building. So they would blindfold him, walk him back there, and then let him do his thing, and then blindfold him and walk him back out.
I love it. So if you'll think about games, so again, this is all stemming from 71.
Yeah.
And so I was born in 71, and so I didn't venture into something that resembled an arcade for many years. But anyone that did would tell you the two things you'd find in arcades in 71, that era, were mechanical games and pinball machines.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to find. And stuff maybe like a foosball table or stuff like that would have been around as
Sure.
well. So that's the subject of these early games. That's what they came up with. So they wanted the games to adapt to the Soviet ideology. So as an example, they gave aliens and cowboys in games were replaced by heroes of Russian folk tales,
Mm-hmm.
which is that's funny. Ironically, we'll be venturing into that realm. The arcade machines also were put out to give younger people, children, ideas of what they might do in the future.
Yes.
For example, drive a taxi was the one Wiki uses, which I thought was funny. So after looking at everything that was put out, according to a couple different sources I found, it looks like they made about 90 different types of arcade machines in the USSR. Some of them were completely original. Yeah, and well, I mean, some of them were, but a large part of them weren't completely
No.
original. I'll tell you something. If we'd had the Coco over there, it would have fit right in. It's like Clonomania would be running wild over there. Now you've got to think. For the longest time, you were only getting the machines from the '70s, but eventually, as the arcade video games started taking over the arcades, this happened eventually in Russia, although I would say probably 7 or 8 years later than it would have. If the first video games in America started coming out and I mean, in mass, and say the late '70s, Russia was getting them probably in the mid '80s. That's when you
Yes.
started getting them, which both our games come from that time period.
And something to note, uh, when we say Soviet arcades, there were really three places that you would see what we would consider arcade machines, and most of these were mechanical machines. They would be in movie theaters. That was a classic place for them. They would be in theme parks, amusement parks, and then very, very few places, only your largest cities would have an actual dedicated building that was for an arcade. And most of those dedicated buildings, like Aaron was talking about before, it was what might you want to do? Do you want to be a taxi driver? Do you want to be a farmer? Those buildings were set up in a way that they were educational centers.
Yeah,
Now they still took profit from people playing games, and I want to talk about the price here in a moment.
yeah.
But it was something that you would take a family to and say, "Okay, kid, play some of these games and see what you want to do for the rest of your life."
Well, that's funny. So, one of the there's a big museum in Moscow, I believe it is, and they've looked over their collection, and I've seen this one mentioned a lot. One of the earliest games that came out was Battle of the Sea, which is a clone of an American mechanical game
Hmm.
that it's still around. You can play that at this museum. One thing I should mention, in the states, when you play a arcade game, it's a quarter, right? But even back in those days, in Russia, from what I read, almost all the machines accepted 15 kopeck coins.
Yes,
15. I don't want to say 15-cent coins.
that
It's a coin worth 15 kopecks. Now,
which
uh,
is 1/15 of a ruble, or it's like 15 cents to a ruble.
to put it in perspective, I saw this example written out. You could go see a movie and buy a donut for 15 kopecks.
Yes,
All right, so that shows you. So that makes a video game a pretty expensive thing to do if you're with your kopecks.
yes.
15
And, and
cent or 15 kopeck coins.
what I the thing I saw it compared to was for 15 kopecks, you could ride the bus anywhere in a city 3 times.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Now, before we move off this, I want to talk about a few of these games that I thought that stood out as I looked them over. There's all kinds of places to look and see what kind of games they had, and you're going to see that a lot of the games have a Soviet look to them, like the video games. They're just this weird looking cabinets, but they did have stuff like the domed hockey. That was something that they had over there. They had a lot of games where you use like a light gun style sniper type games.
Yes.
But the one game that got me was one called Repka. It was a test of strength. I don't know if you saw this.
The turn up.
It's a yes. There'd be a turnip. It's a picture machine that's at like a 45-degree angle, and there's a turnip sticking out partially out of it with I guess the root, and the root's like a handle, and your goal was to pull this thing as far as you can
Yeah.
out.
It's a test of strength, but instead of punching something or kicking something, you're grabbing a handle and seeing how hard you can pull towards yourself.
I want to give a shout out to the Russia Beyond website for a lot of great pictures. But they mentioned that the problem with Repka is that no human could pull this turnip out. I saw the amount of strength it would take, and no man could do it.
Yeah.
But they said what often happens was people were jerking these things so hard that they'd fall bass backwards down in the floor behind them, which Pretty good.
And the thing is, the machine, like you were talking about the 45-degree angle, the whole reason why it was at a 45-degree angle was
Yeah.
because you could put your foot on the machine for extra leverage as you pull this
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So
It's built to do that.
ideally, what you would do is have neither foot on the floor, both feet on the machine,
That's it.
with the root that you're pulling, the mechanical root that you're pulling in between your legs, pulling back.
I love it. I love it.
That was the planned way of making it happen, which is crazy.
Now, one other game I had to look at, I was trying to find. I'm not gonna lie, our ability to pick games was limited. There aren't that many games that are emulated. If I'm
Well,
honest,
there are not a ton of games that were
dumb.
picture tube games.
Yeah.
A majority of the games in the arcades over there during Soviet times were mechanical. Because mechanical they could do. They could figure out how to make mechanical work because they had the light sensing diodes and crap like that. They had that, so they could make those work. When it came to actually putting boards into machines, that's a tougher stretch.
One of the games that has been dumped, like I said, a lot of these haven't been dumped, was a game called Kot Rabolov, which translates to catfisher. But this is a sort of a fighting game where you're a cat and you're fighting and you're beating up crows that are trying to eat worms out of the ground. And then mysteriously, once you flatten the crow, then you start grabbing worms. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
fully understand this.
You got to have the worms to catch to go and catch the fish.
Well, maybe you're right. I don't know. I don't
In
think
the second stage,
I didn't get that far.
in the second stage, you're actually fishing,
Yeah.
and you've got to beat up the things from trying to take your catch. And on the third phase, you've caught the fish, and you have to beat the people up from robbing you.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I think the turnip game would do well here, frankly.
Well, I think it be Lawsuit City.
I think that's
what I
the
think.
one I would go after. So that's a quick summarization of Soviet arcades. I mean, you would be very fortunate to visit one in your life, to be honest with you, unless you were a local. An arcade, not a machine.
Right. Here's the thing about that. You're not wrong. Because like I said before, movie theaters, theme parks, or the learning center type things that were arcades. Those were the three main places. The people who visited these things, it was a once in a lifetime situation because of the expense. I was listening to someone tell a story of he remembered when he went and he was giving 3 rubles,
Yeah.
which is
How many kopecks is in a ruble?
let's see,
Is that
6
10? No, that'd be
No.
that'd be a 1.5 rubles, wouldn't it?
you'd get 6 for each one, so you'd come away with 18.
Maybe. We don't know for
18 to
sure.
20. But what he said he ran through his money, and it felt like it was just a couple minutes when it was actually hours. Because some of these machines, you got your money's worth when you played them, the mechanical stuff. But he said it was the greatest day of his life. He said, he remembers it so vividly. So something to equate. I can't even think of anything that would equate to that over here. Because when I want to go to an arcade, even as a kid, I was like, "Hey, Mom, I want to go to the arcade." She'd be like, "No," and then I get to go a little bit later.
Well, you brought something up earlier which I hadn't thought about, but like you're right, there was Soviet bloc, the Soviet Union was under so many various international sanctions and whatnot that I mean it was rough going over there.
Yeah.
And it was happy when everything changed. It's tough. But it was tough sledding back in the day.
Yeah.
So with all that said, it was our duty to grab a couple games to get a look at. I guess
I think I'm going to go first.
Oh, you're going to go first?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. What do you got?
I'm not even going to try to pronounce these.
You've got to
Russian
try.
names.
You've got to try because I'm going to do mine.
Okay. My game is Koheke Konk, which translates.
It rolls off the tongue.
It does. It translates to the little humpback horse. And this is a fable, a story of your princess and your king and your evil wizard. Uh,
Just all that stuff.
yeah, I mean, it's general. This guy was bad. He transformed things into things. Uh, that ran as a movie over there for a while, but we're not here to talk about the movie. We're here to talk about the game. A Little Humpback Horse, released in 1980. Some places said 1986. Some places said 1988. And we'll actually go on this into why that time frame is what it is on Aaron's game. Um, but what do you do in this? Well, you are
Fail. Fall down.
you are a prince on a humpback horse, and this little horse,
Wait, that guy's a prince, and that's the horse they gave him.
well, I think it's before he reaches true prince status.
Okay.
Um, and he is traveling through the land to rescue the princess. And doing this, he has a club for an attack. He can jump, which is up on the joystick, and that's it. He walks in segments. In other words, I've talked about this before. You can't nudge forward. When you nudge forward, he'll start to take a step, but if you don't commit fully, he'll just retreat back to the square he was in.
Yeah.
It's a side-scrolling flip screen game, and I'll have to say one thing off the bat. I think the graphics on this are quite nice.
Yeah. The graphics look good.
I think everything is well defined. I think your sprite and your horse's sprite is a little small compared to some of the other things depicted in the game. But I think overall, it's a very pleasing outside color palette with a nice background, and it fills the screen. It goes from top to bottom, except for a score bar at the very, very bottom of the game. The sound in this game, as with all these games, is possibly the worst thing I've ever experienced.
Man, they in Soviet Russia, sound deafens you. It is the worst. Both these games make the PC beeper sound like ELO.
They were restricted to beeps and boops.
Yeah, they were.
And instead of, some people can take beeps and boops and do amazing things.
Yeah. Not much.
Beautiful music.
Well,
they make music.
Yeah. Pushing it there.
They did not do that here. And in fact, it sounds like torturing animals the entire time.
It sounds like you ever have one of those hearing tests. It's what it reminded me of. Do you hear this tone? Let me hold it for 10 minutes. How about this tone? And I'm like, I hear it, for God's sakes.
It's like a hearing test if the person on the other side giving the test was deaf and just kept cranking up the volume. So, this game reminded me of Pitfall almost immediately because you were going from left to right, flip screen style.
Yeah, but Pitfall, you can go either way.
Well, no, not the first one.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, you can. You can go either way on Pitfall.
Not on the first one.
You can.
No, you could go back, but you were forced to go forward on the very
No,
first
you're not. I know how to play Pitfall.
I'll look into it. I think you're mistaken. I think that was Pitfall 2.
Help me out, people.
Anyway, this controls incredibly roughly due to the fact that you have to hold and make yourself go to that next square. And if you stop even a little bit short, you end up going back. And the game plays where objects are falling from the sky. They are on the ground that you have to jump. They are pits that you have to get close to. And all of these are things where you want to nudge a little bit closer so you feel better about making that jump or going under that object. And in this game, it's just not, you can't do it. So you have to commit to walking forward and jumping as a smooth action. There's no stopping and preparing. The jump in this is very awkward.
Yeah.
It's a very lungy jump, which I guess makes sense being on horseback. And the enemies, for the most part, are non-threatening. For example, they're lumps on the ground, little brown lumps. I'm not exactly sure what they're...
Lump.
Exactly. And those, you just jump them and they disappear. You'll find yourself on a lake that you have to jump on a small moving platform to get across. And also, you will find yourself um, fighting a wizard, and he's the main protagonist in the game. And he's a brutal death machine. He has the ability to throw fireballs both high and low. The low ones you've got to jump. The high ones you can duck, or no, you can hit with your attack weapon. Uh, and let me tell you, folks, that's the last scene you're ever going to see in this game.
Yeah.
Because it is brutally hard to get past, and it's about 4 screens.
If you get past the peaches, the falling peaches of death, you've done better than most people.
Well, that's true. But this game, I have watched a full playthrough. It's about 16 screens long.
Yeah.
Which sounds super impressive.
Yeah.
Until you realize it's 1980, possibly up to 88. And you think about other things that were released in the arcades in 1988, and then it's far less impressive. Aaron, I never got to see you. Got to see me play this, but I never got to see you play it. How did you feel?
Well,
about it?
I mean, we wouldn't have been that impressed. I'm not gonna lie to you. This game, to me, it reminds me a little bit of like something like Hunchback or something, where where you kind of slowly, methodically stumble towards enemies, try to avoid them. And it was and there's a little bit of Smurf adventure at the beginning where you're on the ground, or stuff's like birds are crapping on you or whatever. You're right. I think the prince and his horse are well done in terms of the way they look,
Absolutely.
and the backgrounds. I mean, again, you're right. Let's say it's 88. This would be pretty remedial.
Yes.
But if this was 83, we'd be not bad.
Well,
but I'm just saying. I mean,
it's 5 years, dude.
I'm just saying. What are you going to give some? I mean, it's Soviet arcades. What do you want?
We know the absolute earliest this could be was 86.
Right.
And it almost certainly was not 86.
I'm going to go on the assumption that the guys that created this one hadn't designed a lot of games. So, like, their idea of what the difficulty level was probably a little quirky.
Can you imagine spending the equivalent of like 2 loaves of bread to play this for like 15 seconds?
Well,
First
no.
of all, I think your parental figure would beat you for wasting that kind of money on such a small experience.
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, the game, it looks like the kind of game I would enjoy in a lot of ways because it's like platformy,
Yes.
But it is really hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard your guy doesn't move well. He doesn't avoid well. He's not fast. In fact, they're incredibly slow.
Yes.
And the club is difficult to use. The sword, whatever he's got.
Yeah, club.
You have to really kind of you have to try to guess where the guy's going to be well early on because it takes him a while. In some ways, this reminds me of the Dragon's Lair for the NES. You know how everything was deliberate and slow. Your guy kind of moves like that. I mean, it's a mixed bag. The sound, it's the dirt worst. We can agree on that.
Yes.
The visuals aren't bad, and the concept is okay. But the actual execution of this is one of those games where the gameplay, I guess, is the controls. Like, I don't know if they meant it to be. And so at the end of the day, it's a difficult slog. There's a screen where you walk out and just peaches are flying from the
the
sky,
are falling from the trees.
and you just have to. If you get hit by a peach, you die. They're super peaches.
Yeah, everything is one hit.
And so you have to avoid the peaches. It's hard. I can never get past there's like the 4th peach, I think it is. There are later levels where you're in like a castle and like things are flying around so randomly that it just looks like that they just basically had random things happen without any regard to the skill, ability, or the effort that the player can put in given the limitations of the character you're controlling.
Gameplay was definitely second fiddle.
Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, if I had to weigh, here's the way I measure all the games in Russia. Is this more fun than a movie and a donut? And the answer to this one is a resounding hell no.
I have a question, Aaron.
Yeah.
Do you think? Let's say this was released in America.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. We'll say in 1982.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you think that this would have got played?
No.
You don't think
for
so?
the previous things that I mentioned. I mean,
Too hard?
this to me, this is much more like something we'd play on a
Console.
computer.
Yeah.
Well, not really a this reminds me more of a computer game than a console game.
Yeah.
But I mean, or maybe like a ColecoVision or something might play something like this for the next step up. But it reminds me of something more like something you play on like the MSX or maybe one of those computers from France that we tried out. So yeah, like remember Doggy? Like
Yes.
this is in that area of, but I mean it is colorful and nice. And really, if you actually went there and tweak the controls to make it just like some more,
Normal?
yeah, then you could probably have a pretty decent little game here.
Yeah.
I mean, it would stand up against most games of its type
I,
until you get to the later levels where it gets so random.
I think that if this was put into a U.S. arcade in 1982, it would have gotten played until people got to the point where they couldn't get any farther. And
Yeah.
the reason why I'm staggering so hard on that sentence is I'm sitting here thinking, but there are lots of games in the arcade where people just kept throwing money at it. But I don't think this was good enough to keep throwing money at. I think this is something that it's attractive enough that people would have played it uh, in the beginning when they first saw it, but then it would be pushed to the corner of an arcade until it eventually got swapped out for something else. Aaron, did we get any Discord reviews on said
We
wonders
believe it or
game?
not, we did. Despite the fact that we just posted what we were playing yesterday, we did have a Discord participants. Our good buddy Pajako chimes in. He says, "So initially, I thought this was going to be a clone of Pitfall. It certainly has some similar elements, but after a few levels, it starts to change up a little. Graphically and musically, this one's on par with Snow Queen. It has the same levels of questionable sprite collision. I did like the progress meter at the top of the screen. That was quite good.
Yeah.
The main problem with the game is the movement is quite slow, so getting across each screen is quite a long process. I made it about 6 screens in before I had to give up and go do grown-up things. So I quickly checked a video playthrough and saw that yeah, there's some BS level design stuff in this. If you yeah, no kidding. If you have to learn to work with a game and throw some of what you know out the window when it comes to platform games. Ultimately, I had fun playing and not enough time, but I really think this one you can make quick progress and probably complete if you were stuck in on an evening or two. One of the two games, I preferred Snow Queen, but only just barely. Another fun look at the world of arcades you never saw. Check this out just to be prepared for a lot of trudging across screens, and you'll be golden. 6.9 out of 10. 6.9. It's very precise from Pajako there, Brent. So yeah, that would I don't think I'd go that high, frankly. I didn't like I wanted to like this one, if I'm honest.
I think this is a solid mid game, maybe slightly lower than mid game,
Well,
just because I felt compelled to keep going. And if things would have lined up a little bit differently, and I would have had more time, I could seriously see me trying to trawl through the whole game.
oh boy.
But you know, as it is, it's just a little too crappy to want to invest that kind of time.
It reminds me of when we played a lot of like older computer games, like real old ones, like maybe monochrome games that have this sort of bad control.
Yes.
That's what it reminded me of. Like so there are games in our back catalog that control like this. And this isn't the worst thing we've ever played control wise, that's for darn sure.
Absolutely. So, Aaron, what did you bring to the table?
Oh man, I've been excited about this one, the brand. So when I looked through the games, I saw one that appealed to me right away, and it turned out to be the one I would go for. The name of the game is Snezhnaya Koroleva, or Snow Queen, is the translation. So this was a game released in 1988, and it's based on a movie. Now, unlike you, I do care about movies. I care plenty. So I looked into this, and I'm glad I did. So the Snow Queen was a movie released in 1957, an animated movie, and it was uh, all done in the Soviet Union. Okay, it was based on the fable "The Snow Queen" by Hans Christian Andersen. I'm not gonna lie to you, wasn't familiar with that one coming in. And so, what is the Snow Queen? Just to give you a quick rundown, because the plot has everything to do with the game. Okay,
Figures by.
so the movie starts off. I'll watch this movie, okay, just so I could get in there. So the movie starts off with these two kids who are they grow roses, okay, in Russia, and Kai and Gerda. So they finish growing roses. They come inside, and they're like the grandmother is talking about winter, and they mentioned the Snow Queen, right? And the kids hear about the Snow Queen, they're laughing, and Kai, the boy, is like, "Ah, the Snow Queen. If that chick was around, I'd shove her in the oven and I'd warm her up." And they laughed. Well, little did they know the Snow Queen was watching in a mirror, and the Snow Queen got pissed, right? So pissed off that she broke the mirror and sent like jagged icicles towards the kids through the window with the storm, right? Pissed off. Anyway, some of the ice crystals hit the boy, Kai. Instant heel turn because it penetrated his eye and his heart. And so now Kai became a jerk.
He was kind of a jerk
He
already.
turned full heel, okay? So he's not giving Gerda the time of day. And eventually the Snow Queen comes whipping into town just to see what's going on. He ties a sled to the Snow Queen's sleigh, and Snow Queen takes her to her winter fortress, her ice palace of joy and pain. So Gerda's like, "Oh crap, I got to go save my boy," you know. And so this game sort of follows the adventure she goes on to go up and rescue Kai from the Snow Queen. Right, that's the premise of the film.
Progressive.
Yeah, and get this. Now, here's the part I didn't know. So this movie was, by the way, the artist is real nice, and the Snow Queen, the art design, great. This chick looks like a real cool, right? So this movie was so popular in Russia that it was one of the first movies ever exported to other countries, and it played a big role in like peace and warming relations with the West and stuff. This was a big deal, and this movie got translated into English and was like a big hit. And it had real big players doing the audio for the English version. So it's based now. Granted, it's a video game from '88 based on a movie from '57. So there was a little bit of lead time before you got this game made. So this game ran. I want to mention this because we talked about it before the show. This game ran on a board called the TIA-MC-1. All right, this is an Intel 8088. It says Sound Chips Custom. I would say Sound Chips car horn would be
optional.
Yeah, would be the way I'd say it. This is a 1.77 megahertz processor. So this was a game machine that you could basically change the programs on. And so this was a multi-frame color Russian arcade hardware with replaceable game programs. It ran a ton of games. Okay, now
the way it was described when I was reading about it was this was like a Neo Geo arcade system where you could pull a board out and put another board in, sort of like a standard JAMA system, but the boards were almost like cards.
So according to this, it ran at least I don't know, about at least 10 games. Okay, including mine. And you said yours.
Mine, yes.
I didn't see it. Also ran that Cat, the Fisher. Oh yeah, here it is, the Humpback Horse. So just to name a few of the games that run on this hardware, aside from the two we mentioned, there was a game that looks like suspiciously like a Russian for Autobahn. It's a car racing game. There was a billiards game. There was a game called Star Knight. There was a game called Fighter Jet. There was a game called a Russian Fairy Tale, Dragon Island, a Treasure Island game based on the Robert Louis Stevenson book, and of course the one I'm playing now, and a game called SOS. So a goodly amount of games.
Well, almost all of the arcade games released in this time period were part of that system.
There you go.
From 86 to 88.
My game is a horizontal. The video res on this thing 256 by 256 pixels, 50 hertz, 256 colors. All right, so that would explain how colorful. And I think both our games are one player. My game used a 4-way joystick with 2 buttons.
Yeah,
all right.
Mine was 4-way with 1.
Right. So again, this based on the movie. Now, in this game, you play Gerda, and your job is to go rescue Kai from the Snow Queen. You get 5 minutes to do it. 5 minutes. It's a countdown. It starts off with a nice overview of what you'll be doing.
Yeah, a little map screen.
It's a little map screen. It shows Gerda rolling over to the various levels. And the game consists of 4 playable levels plus a 5th like level if you pull it off. Okay. The first level is the level I like to call collecting roses in a flower garden level. Now, in the
You
movie,
call it that because that's exactly what it is.
yeah, in the movie, there's a scene where at the beginning of the movie, they have roses, but they're just on top of a building. So in the movie, there's a scene where she is in like this courtyard. So I'm guessing that's sort of where this came from. And so in this part of the game, you're Gerda, you run around and you're trying to pick up all the roses that are flashing in the corners of the screen. But you're pursued by green monsters that I can't identify from the film. Like I don't know what they were taken from in the movie, and they appear a couple times. I don't know who they are, to be honest with you. Now, your mileage may vary.
They're not appearing in this picture.
Yeah, and also I'm not 100% sure. Like this you know how like sometimes the movie takes liberties with the book. This may have been better explained in the book. I did not read the book for the show, I'm afraid. So
funny enough, I actually flipped through the book
yeah.
that my game was based on. It's a billion pages.
Oh yeah.
I thought, a little fairy tale. I'll get through. Nope.
So the second scene I call ascending the palace. In this part of the game, you're running up through a palace to get to the roof where you see a golden chariot. Now in the movie, Gerda thought Kai was in this palace, and she ran up into the palace and avoided guards. But when she finally got up there, the princess was up there, and the prince, not Kai. But they had pity on her plight, and they gave her access to their golden chariot. It's parked at the top of the screen, right? The third screen I call the avoid the highwaymen screen. In the movie,
Like these aren't your names.
they didn't have names. In the movie, your chariot gets headed over by highwaymen, and they take it apart. It's because it's the solid gold chariot. I don't blame them. You got to do it. So in this screen, you can see them moving along with money on one part of it. Now I can't identify in the game. You go up levels, and eventually you have to use like a jungle hunt style swing. But when she gets hold of this thing, it's like she jumped on an electrified wire. I mean, she's swinging like a maniac on these.
And screaming.
Well, whatever it is. And so,
screaming.
And I will say, swinging from, it's nothing like Jungle Hunt. It looks like it would be. Eventually, you get to the top. It's a guy that's like shooting stuff at you.
Acorns.
But once you get past him, at the top of the screen, there's a reindeer. In the movie, the thieves take pity on Gerda for her plight, and so they're like, "Listen, take this reindeer to go to the north." You know what I mean? Because it's cold.
Right. Why not?
By the way, she goes into Finland to get this thing. That's how far north she's going. So the next screen I call the ascent to the Snow Queen's castle screen. This is where you're in the icy, frozen tundra of Finland, and you're trying to go up the screen to ascend to the top of the screen. In the movie, Gerda, as she gets closer to the Snow Queen's palace, like the Snow Queen's like giving her the business, like from a metaphysical perspective, like with blizzards and crap.
Yeah.
And she basically hoses up the reindeer. He can't make the trip. He's down. And so Gerda has to get off the reindeer, just got to trudge up on her own. And also, added bonus, Snow Queen's also shooting more shards now, just being a jerk. Because she's irritated. I don't blame her. So in the game, I'm just saying. So, and I should mention, we mentioned the 4 controls and the 2 buttons. On the first screen, you don't jump. You can all you do is you can hit the fire button and like swing a rose to do damage. That's pretty much consistent throughout the game.
Yeah.
And on most of the other screens you can jump. I think on all the other screens you can jump. The jump in this it's very hump horse like in its ability. She's not what I would call the queen of the jumping. So anyway, you've gone through all this trouble. Scene 5, Gerda's tears in the movie. When she gets to the Ice Queen's palace, Ice Queen's sitting there. She rolls in, and Kai's still a jerk. He's like, I don't need you up here. What are you doing here? You're an idiot. What'd you come up here for? you know. But she's so sad that her tears melt the shards that have penetrated Kai's heart and eyes, and they fall to the floor, and he comes out of it, and they embrace. You know, it's beautiful. And then the Snow Queen's like, "I'm going to give you the business."
Yeah.
But then she's like, "Snow Queen, you know, give me a break. You've been hosing me." And the Snow Queen chills out, and like spring warms up the Snow Queen, and spring comes to the whole area. And the Queen's down. And there's a little Jiminy Cricket style narrator in the movie, and he says that eventually Gerda and Kai get married. He goes, "But that's a story for another time." So it's teasing the sequel. You know, that's what he does. Now in the video game, when you get past the ascent to the Snow Queen's castle, there's a scene where like the Snow Queen just kind of disappears, and like there's a whole bunch of roses around. And at the end of the movie, the two of them go back up to their rose garden and they're like hanging out. I guess that's sort of what it symbolizes. I don't know. That's the way the game ends. I thought the game was pretty good, actually.
Well, now let's talk about the game proper.
Well, I mean, I had to explain what's going on. So the first screen has you in a maze of flowers, and you have to get these roses.
It's a top-down perspective.
That's right. And all you can do is when you see a monster, hit it with the rose. It'll go down for a little while and come back.
Yes.
The funny thing about Gerda is she's got great sideways speed like a sprinter, but she runs up and down like a hippo. And so that's when the monsters make their move.
And from a gameplay perspective, the reason why that is this is the only screen where you can move up the screen.
Yeah.
Now there are other screens where you might climb a ladder,
Yeah.
right? But that's a whole different animation. So her left and right motion is the same as it is for every other screen.
Yeah.
But her up and down motion is really slow.
Yeah.
And you make very little progress going up and down the screen. So it can be very jarring when I think there's 4 creatures on the screen coming to get you, and they all just kind of merge to your location.
Yeah.
Whenever you get too close, they'll actually start moving. And if you take it down, it's only down for 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Which is not even enough time if you're moving vertically on the screen to make it past him before it wakes back up.
Yeah.
Like left or right, you can shoot it and move left or right past it. But vertical movement on the screen, you can't get past it.
The monsters move weird too. Like they won't move at all when you're going sideways, but when you start going up and down, that's when they spring.
It's a very weird AI. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know what it is.
big air quotes around that.
It's funny though. I could do great at that scene sometimes, and sometimes I would get caught. It'd be humbling because you don't need to die on that screen because you need to keep the ball rolling.
Yeah.
To get past the next screen. So the next screen, the Ascend the Palace screen, you're literally there are like four or 5 levels. You run all the way to one side, then you appear on the second level. You run all the way to the other side. It's like a stairwell. You just magically go up.
Yeah.
And the whole time, balls are being thrown down from the top, and also there's a guard that will run in a random direction. He'll either start at the top and run down the stairs, or start at the bottom and run up. Sometimes you can get lucky, just run right behind him the entire way, and not even have to fool with him. And then and by the way, you mentioned on the first level, you have to once you finish getting all the roses, the level doesn't end until you move all the way to the top and all the way to the right. I don't know why.
Because there's a crow up there.
Well, I'm just saying that it's not obvious.
Aaron got hung up on that. I did not.
Well, I'm just saying it's not obvious. The second screen, it's the same thing. You've got to go all the way to the top, and once you get up there, that's where you can get in the carriage and to take off. That screen's not that tough. As long as you don't get hit by the balls on the top level, you're okay.
And it's odd because you can still use your rose power to defeat the guards.
Yeah.
And since you're moving left or right, you're moving at a fairly decent pace and have a pretty good control of your character. So of the screens, that I think is probably the easiest.
One thing to mention is that if you're on the bottom screen and the balls hit, they roll towards you and you have to jump them.
Yeah.
Which is weird because they don't do that on any other part. It seems like they would, just to make it more interesting, they would get hung up on other levels, but they don't.
It's a very Donkey Kong-esque layout.
Yeah, that's why you'd think they would do, but it's not.
Minus, instead of going up and down ladders, you just go in one door to appear.
Stairwell, yeah.
Definitely the easiest screen, though. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. The third screen, the Avoid the Highwaymen screen, this is the one where you have to swing on the vines. The vines make this the toughest screen, I think. Well, the last one's pretty tough, too. But the vines, I mean, it's hard to time your jump. And once you're on a vine and you're swinging like a crazy man, I mean, then it's hard to figure out when to hit the button again. It's weird.
So here's the thing with that scene, with this section.
Yeah,
When you to get on the vine initially, it's a very particular starting place.
yeah.
You can't just jump and if your character hits the vine, you attach to it. You have to actually stand back from the edge a little bit, jump, and have your jump starting to descend, and then you will grab the vine.
It reminded me very much of the jumping the horse onto the moving log section of your game.
Yes.
And so which hey, same hardware, so maybe there's something to it.
Now, once you are attached to that vine, you swing wildly. The vine always swings at the same left or right pacing.
Yeah,
But your character sprite will swing wildly left and right.
yeah, it's crazy.
And that can be disorienting. The thing to do is completely ignore whatever your character's doing.
Just watch the vine.
As soon as the vine is all the way to the right,
Yeah.
hit your jump button and you'll actually make the jump no problem.
Yeah, the rest of this level is not that tough. Avoiding the guys that are rolling the gold coins down the
This is
tree's not that tough.
This is a 3 level in height.
Yeah.
So that's the vines are level 1. Level 2 is just there are 2 men walking from right to left on the screen. Just get behind them, walk all the way across, no problem.
Yeah.
Something to make a note of on the ladders. If you let go of up, you will fall off the ladder.
Yeah.
And you won't get hurt from falling, but if you fall on a bad guy, you will die.
Yeah.
So going up the ladder is actually a small amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The third level of this stage is a guy that is launching acorns at you.
Yeah. He didn't appear till you get up there either.
Yeah. So he can either launch the acorns short, medium, or long. And when the acorns hit the ground, they will roll a small amount. If he shoots them long, you can actually run under the acorn. If he shoots them short, most of the times you don't have to worry about it because it will disappear before you get to it. Medium is his most lethal shot because you basically have to be all the way to the left hand of the screen to dodge it.
Yeah. Yeah. He can be difficult if he gives you the oddball shot. Yeah.
But when you get close to this man, he and his acorn disappear. So after you dodge an acorn, you can actually just make a mad dash to him. He'll disappear, and you'll go into the final.
Which is just exactly like the dragon and the wizard in your game.
Yes.
When you get anywhere near him, they're gone. The last level, the ascent to the Snow Queen's castle in the snow. This is the hardest level, probably. I would say. I didn't get to try this one too much. I mean, when you can get put in a certain spot where it's tough to get around. I didn't like this level.
Your rose power is incredibly overpowered on all the scenes because it instantly kills or disables all bad guys. This is very Donkey Kong-ish. Again, you know what this reminded me of? This scene reminded me of Yeti.
It's not that good.
No, just this scene. You have to basically climb to the top. There are several enemies, like 8 to 10 enemies on the screen at one time.
Yeah,
which is kind of impressive that they can keep track of all those enemies.
It's not that impressive.
It's a little bit, and all you have to do is get to the top. Bam, you've beaten the game.
Yeah, and then you get the last level. So what did you think of this one then?
I really like this one.
Oh, we're okay.
I think this was better than my game because it was far more playable.
Yeah,
I think my game was actually more interesting. I think the visuals were more interesting. I think the sound on this, even though the sound was the most dreadful, horrible thing on both games, this one is slightly better. And by being better, it's not good.
No. What about the timer? Did you have any problem with the timer?
No. In fact,
I got caught by it a couple of times.
You can disregard the timer. I mean, as long as you don't just sit there.
Sometimes that last level, it's hard to get up there, so that you get trapped.
The most impressive thing about this is even though it's only 5 screens, the gameplay is pretty different per screen.
Yeah, I did like that.
The first screen is completely unique throughout all the levels, and then you can say 2 and 4 are slightly similar.
Yeah,
but I'm sorry, not 3 and 4 are slightly similar, but they're not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
I like the mix up.
Nice.
Yeah, it's colorful. I liked it. I liked it more once I watched the movie because they actually somehow sort of fit this into the theme of the film. So
Yeah.
kudos to that. I mean, they had 30 years to get it right, but they got it. Sometimes sometimes stuff has to percolate. I did enjoy this one. It's an interesting game, and based on a very interesting, a very interesting film. We did get a review of this one, the brand, if you can believe it. Again,
Absolutely.
it's our buddy Pajako.
Let's go. Jocko's the man.
Pajako says a game that appears to have a bit of everything in it. It's a bit Pac-Man, a bit Donkey Kong, a little bit Jungle King. So so when you load this up, you kind of know what you're getting in each level. Graphically, this is quite pleasing. While the tunes are a little beepy and repetitive, they're a lot beepy.
Little beepy.
And for the hardware, they're not too bad. I played a few. Listen, I'm going to stop right there. Pajako clearly has a more tolerance for beeping and booping. I had a DOS PC for years, and this was the most annoying. This sounds like something you deter a dog with. All right. Anyway, I played a few rounds and made it to the last level, but didn't complete it sadly due to the timer running out. There's a timer to get through all 4 levels. I did like this from a design perspective, but the gameplay execution is not great. So it can be quite clunky to play in places with iffy sprite collision and luck in places, especially on the second level. But within 30 minutes of playing, I almost had made it to the end, so you can quickly pick it up. This is certainly a game that can work on other machines. It can be picked up by homebrewers looking for an interesting next project. What also struck me after playing a few games is this one of the few games in the 80s to feature a female protagonist, which is kind of neat. I didn't think about that. A fun look into the nearest we'll get to a parallel universe of arcade games and worth checking out, but this isn't the best game you'll ever play, 7 out of 10. I should mention that Pajako also found a port of this game.
Yes.
I think it was on was it the ZX?
Yes.
So this actually did
modern port.
This did get a port. He's right. You are. I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, you didn't play a lot. It's an interesting slant to have the lady come and rescue the man.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, much like KT from Top Banana, that when she hurts people with the rose, she's using the power of love.
There you go.
So, and I will say, I'll give her credit. She has now ascended to the level of KT, the other female protagonist that used love to win in a go up platformer. So that's the nearest thing I can compare it to. But I enjoyed this one, the Brent. Obviously, these were not on eBay in any way.
Yeah.
But I did look, if you can believe that, just to see if there's anything up there. And I will say there are very few examples of these arcade machines left on the earth. They're in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
If anyone who watches this happens to own one of these or own a board, I would love to hear from you in the comments. And if you've played any Russian games from the Soviet era, I would love to hear from you. We always get some real interesting commenters. Sometimes they'd be people that wrote the games will be in there. So if you had anything to do with this game, or if you enjoyed either the films, the books, feel free to drop us a note. I'd like to hear from you. This is one of those where I expect to get some good comments down below.
Well, I'll have to say, going into this, I didn't know what to expect, and coming out of this, I don't know what to expect either. So there you go.
If this ever came up again, I don't know if we can. I know we can at least find one more game.
Yeah.
When I say there are a few of these games dumped, I mean to the tune of like 3 or 4.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, I've seen people talk about the availability of these things. They aren't. These are uber super mega rare.
Yeah.
And I mean, being in the Soviet Union, these are not things that made their way into the personal home.
Yeah, and you got to think that when the wall came down and the Soviet era ended, that's it. So they weren't making it. It's not like there's a new batch of Soviet games coming out because modern Russia don't count. This is the Soviet Union. Yeah. So it was fun though. I'm glad we could find at least a couple to play, and I'm happy there's a couple museums around that feature that stuff because that is, you talk about the rarest of the rare. That's a bygone era that a lot of people will never know. So I actually felt like I had a good time just learning.
Yeah, it was a fun.
And normally I hate that.
You know what else is a fun subject, Aaron?
Talking about me?
Well, no, it's the wheel.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Ooh, a little hot on the wheel theme there.
Yeah, you're bad about
Aaron,
that.
what did you add?
I don't know, the Brent, because it's been gone for so long, I can't remember.
Multi-sport games that are not epics.
Oh yes, that's from Chris Fold.
Chris Fold.
Chris Fold, and the Retro Rewind. It's like the Big 20 on there.
Yes,
the Vic
you
20.
did.
And by the way, we'll be right back next week with another ARG. So this is a hot topic.
Yeah.
It's like the old day, 2 in a row. Fire that sucker up.
Here we go.
How's it feel to spin that thing again? You liking that?
It feels good.
All right.
Good.
And the winner is, please don't be something incredibly difficult. I can't see what it says.
It is Universal Arcade.
Oh, excellent. Those are going to be good. That's from Buck Owens. Buck Owens. So that means we're going to be playing games from the Universal people. I believe they're amongst the things they did were the Mr. Do games.
Oh, excellent.
So that'll be, hey, listen. And we've already played some of those, so we're going to dig deep into the Universal catalog. That should be a lot of fun.
At least that's a very doable in a week piece.
Yeah. And so just a couple catch-ups here before we go. Again, next on the Retro Rotation, we're going to be back with next week with Universal Arcade Games. We're going to be right back. A rare 2 in a row for ARG Presents since we skipped over to do R. Sinclair last week. I want to mention that a week, it'll be, I guess it's the 29th of November.
Yes.
We will be doing, and we've confirmed you're going to be around for the Thanks for Giving Marathon, the Friday after Thanksgiving here in the U.S. 8 or so hours of live gameplay from me and the Brent, streamed to you directly to your brains. That Thanksgiving, this will be what, the 4th or 5th one we've done, I believe. Brent, something on those, so maybe more.
No, more than that.
Maybe more than that. It's where we get together and just play a bunch of games. I don't know how we're going to pick the games. We may just randomly pick them. Don't know, because we're going into this because we weren't sure Brent could do it.
Yeah.
So it's thank God, because 8 hours of me playing games by myself is going to go down hard. That's not the way you're going to spend your after Thanksgiving with just me. So you have both of us here. But we always have a good time playing some games that day. So that'll be a lot of fun. So again, give them the date on that to Brent.
29th.
And we're going to start that at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and play a full day of games.
And I do believe the new time for ARG Presents moving forward is going to be 6 p.m.
6 p.m. on Sundays.
6 p.m.
That's
on
Eastern
Sunday.
Standard Time. Again, we apologize to our people. It's late for you guys, but I mean, what are you gonna do? It's that or nothing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go with that. Just a couple other quick notes. Coming out in probably about 2 or 3 days after ARG comes out this week, I've got a show coming out where I'll look at the gaming aspects of free DOS. If you're interested in that, free DOS is a lot of fun. And if you don't know what it is or have any interest in it, I'll be doing a little video. It'll be coming out probably on Wednesday or Thursday this week. And I think, we should also mention that after Thanksgiving, we'll be doing the Christmas shows for December, and every one of the Retro Rotation shows is going to get a Christmas show.
Yep.
Coco Show, R. Sinclair, Atari ST Show, ARG are going to get a Christmas show, and they'll culminate when hopefully, if it goes right, Boat, and the Brent will all get together for an end-of-the-year wrap-up we did last year. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
And so we're going to do that at the end of the year, and then we'll start the rotation fresh in January, the Brent. That sound good to you?
Yippers?
All right, you got anything to add?
Nope.
All right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, all the live chatters, all of our supporters. We really appreciate you guys for supporting us.
Absolutely.
Even if you've just added a like or subscribe to the channel, and whatever you can do, we appreciate it as we roll the channel up to 10,000 subs. I'd love to get there one of these days. We're on the track. If you haven't subbed already, we would be quite happy if you'd give us a quick sub. But thanks to all of our followers, listeners, Patreons. We'll be back next week for Universal Arcade Games. And until then, das Vidanya.
We got it going. With a spin of the wheel, we'll uncover our fate and stream it to you all in one take. We tend to be loud and we fight quite a bit, but it's an unscripted show, so you get what you get if we start.